CCU Orlando and Aikens Counseling Center present The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly show featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 14, part 2 of our interview with filmmaker Daniel Karslake. And now, your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson, and special guest, Daniel Karslake.
I want to delve into a little bit a little bit more about the movie. I'm excited about the movie on many, many levels. I'm happy it's going to be out there because I think, like For the Bible, Every 3 Seconds, both in their own way really challenged our thinking. And one of the things about the faith group we find ourselves in, which is known as New Thought, is, we try to have one every now and then, which means we're open to expanding our awareness. We want new experiences. We want to be educated on the things we don't understand. We want to broaden our perspective so that as we encounter life, we have more room to experience the goodness of God. So this movie, I think, is really important for doing just that, for giving people a new thought about what is godly, what is holy, and to even challenge some perceptions. So I think for some people that watch the movie, it is going to be challenging, but in the best possible way.
Right. Well, that's absolutely the goal. I mean, as we've chosen these families, we've really tried to cover the gamut of what is most challenging right now within the LGBTQ community and religion. So we know about the 2 transgender stories. We have a Latino Catholic story, a Puerto Rican kid who was raised by very conservative Catholic parents and a grandmother. Yeah. But that story, miraculously, is one of the sort of simplest, because his worst nightmare was his father finding out that he was gay, because his father is a Puerto Rican construction foreman, and he's everything that says. He's very macho, very all male, and he literally thought his dad would just immediately kick him out, and his very Catholic mother would not have a problem with that. But instead, when he was outed, his father just immediately embraced him, said, I love you no matter what. If someone has a problem that you're gay, they're going to have to go through me. And that story for me is so powerful, because that's a message we never see in the media, certainly, about Latino men.
Right.
And that's an Orlando story, actually. Vico, his parents live here. He came to live with them. 2 years after that happened, he lived with them, got his advanced degree, got a great job, and went ahead and rented his first apartment where he's living alone. Wow. And his friends tell him all about this concept of a housewarming. And so he has this housewarming, and his 2 best friends, Amanda and Mercedes, young straight girls, but love Vico to death, made all the food, and his mentor came from northern Florida, and just a huge party. About midnight, the night of the housewarming, the party's still going really strong, and he's getting worried about his neighbors because he's just moved in. He doesn't want to piss off the people who live next to him and above him and below him. So he suggests that they all take the party to a club, and it's June 12th, 2015, and they go to Pulse. And so the third act is what happened when they got to Pulse, and it's obviously hugely tragic. And this is where you, Alice, come into the film, because you had such a important and vivid experience through that whole nightmare. But I thought it was so important that pulse be in this film, because these films have a shelf life. Yeah. There have been so many shootings since Pulse. Yes. It was at the time the largest number of people murdered in one place. But that has now been eclipsed by the Las Vegas shooting. Right. But I just don't, religion was all over Pulse, right? There was religion behind the gun. Yes. And those kids who were there for Latin night, most of them wouldn't have been welcome in their churches 12 hours later. No. So this was kind of where they could be their authentic selves. We know that that's one of the big things that gay bars are for people, is it's finally a place where you can be who you really are. So it was very important to me that story be in the film. This beautiful, beautiful story of a father and a son, and then moving forward, what happened with Vico and to Vico and his dear friends at Pulse.
Yes, it was. I don't have words to describe the tragedy and what came after in terms of support and ministry. I even just had someone back at the ministry the other day who is a survivor and has been, the struggle has just been tremendous. But amazing resiliency. But what happened at Pulse is hard to speak about. It's what Pulse was for the community at large is even hard to explain because of even the energy behind Barbara Poma starting it, was in honor of her gay brother. And so the vibe, every gay bar that I've ever known of has always been welcoming to everyone, but Pulse in particular, because of its location, it was downtown. A lot of, let's say, straight folks, gay folks. It wasn't, yes, it was a gay bar, but it was a safe place for everyone. And as I've said many times, I think a lot of churches could learn a lesson about welcoming from Pulse because of the safety that was there for so many. And again, as you know, that night, there were many people there dancing, mothers and sons, sisters and brothers. It was an important gathering place of love and acceptance.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some of the other stories?
Sure. Yeah. So there are two other stories. We left out a Mormon story in the first film. Mormon, obviously, the LDS Church is a big part of Christianity.
Yes.
And I'll never forget when For the Bible was at Sundance. You have, 7 to 9 screenings at the Sundance Film Festival, and 2 of them are always down in Salt Lake as kind of a community service for Sundance, between Sundance and Salt Lake. So I went to both of the screenings during the festival that were in Salt Lake, and at both Q&As after the screening, young Mormon men stood up, 2 different men, but one at each Q&A, and said something like, "I love this film. I cried all the way through it. I think it's really powerful, and I would love for my parents to see it, but my Mormons won't watch a film that's not about them. They they consider themselves very specialized as Christians. So why didn't you include a Mormon story?"
Yes, that's
and
very true.
I've never forgotten that. And I've always thought, why didn't I? You make the film that the universe puts in front of you. And that movie was made through me. This movie I'm making now feels absolutely the same way. It doesn't feel like I'm making anything happen. It feels like it's just being made through me. But it was really clear to me that we needed to include the Mormon Church because they are particularly violent to their members who come out in any way.
Yes.
They're told either to enter into a heterosexual marriage and God will change them, or be celibate their entire lives, both of which are incredibly I don't know the only word I can come up with is violent. That's hugely violent. What about the wife or the husband who isn't gay? There are just so many casualties to that.
There are, yes.
The suicide rate for
huge.
Men between 13 and 24 in Utah is the highest in the nation, primarily because of this issue. So we have a beautiful Mormon story, and then finally the 5th story involves the other issue that we're taking on in the film, and that is a deeply evangelical couple from Seattle whose son, they have 4 kids, and their oldest son came out to them when he was 12, and their response was their church's response, and it was, okay, this is what he's saying now. Let's get him into reparative therapy.
Oh, no.
God will change him. So he was put in conversion or reparative therapy for 6 years.
It's called conversion therapy too, yeah.
And it was the huge ministry, quote unquote, headquartered here in Orlando, Exodus.
Yes.
So he was in Exodus reparative therapy for 6 years, and he emerged at 18 deeply destroyed,
I was going to
really,
say, yes.
because he was a incredibly faithful, deeply religious kid.
Yes.
And God clearly didn't love him enough to change him. His parents had made it clear that they needed him to change. So he very clearly and consciously said to his parents when he turned 18, this is too painful for me. I can't live this way. I
Yes.
think I've read about certain people finding spirituality through drugs, and I think maybe I'm going to try that, because otherwise I can't imagine being here without some help. And they very calmly said, well, if you're going to make that decision, you cannot stay in the house. You have 3 brothers and sisters. We don't want drugs in the house, so you'll have to leave. So he moved out, and like something within a week, he went from pot to heroin and literally disappeared for 2 years. They didn't know if he was alive or dead. And during that time, the parents, who were deeply panicked that he was gay or saying he was making this choice, ultimately, almost immediately realized, what, we don't even care about the gay thing anymore. We just need him to be alive. He just needs to be alive.
Right.
So
Right.
in his absence, they completely came to a new place.
Yes.
He called after about 2 years, said, can you ever love me again? Yes. What if I have a boyfriend? Bring 20 boyfriends, just come home.
Yes.
And so he came home, went into rehab, and beautiful
Oh, incredible.
beautiful thing. Ultimately, he made the sort of typical addict mistake.
Sure.
After 10 months of being in recovery, he went out with his former using friends.
Yes, old friends, yep.
And it took his life. And his parents, his parents are still deeply evangelical, but they are very clear that they were slowly building the gun that they were placing in his hands. And so they are incredibly powerful people to
bet.
talk about this scourge, I believe, which is called reparative therapy. So the
Yes.
other real mission of this film is to put a final nail in the coffin of reparative therapy, because even though Exodus closed in 2014, 2 other huge ministries have grown up globally that are now bigger combined than Exodus was.
Yeah.
And we have a Secretary of Education who is a huge funder of reparative therapy. We
Right.
have a vice president who is very pro-reparative therapy, and this is a human rights issue.
And
It is.
the needle's moving on that in some states, though, isn't it? Aren't we starting to see some conversion therapy laws show up?
There are laws against conversion therapy now in 41 states. I'm sorry, 9 states. Conversion therapy is still legal in 41 states.
I was going to say, I don't think.
And there's a huge movement in California, which is one of those 9 states, to repeal that, because California has more mega churches than any state in the union, and 1 out of every 4 Californians identifies as evangelical. So they are mobilizing, and I'm not going to take a risk that this sort of wave of anti-conversion therapy laws is going to continue, because there really hasn't been a new one in at least 2 years.
And which kind of goes back to what you were saying at the beginning with hey, we won, guys, we have marriage equality, so let's go move on to whatever other issue, but it doesn't go away. It's just there are those lying in wait, ready to take over the administration or whatever, and they're going to pounce even harder. It's like this pendulum swing, and
Right.
And we had 8 years of the Obama administration and a conservative Supreme Court, setting up marriage equality, but now it's wildly swinging back the other way,
And
violently, to use your term.
And it's still the reality that in most of this country, yes, you can get married on Sunday, but for getting married on Sunday to the same-sex person that you love, you can be fired on Monday, you can be thrown out of your housing on Monday.
That's right.
There are so many laws that have never been, that's not about moving backwards. We are still second-class citizens in a huge way, and we're not going in the right direction.
Yeah, that's the major concerning part, is not going in the right direction. And go ahead, Dave.
I'm interested in you live in Germany, in Berlin. I'm interested in the international, couple of things. First of all, is the entire world just going, U.S., what the heck? And is this a global thing of of anti-LGBTQ sentiment, or is the USA really kind of the last vestige of social progress?
Yeah,
Wait,
okay.
I said that wrong.
So those are
The
no,
last
but I
holdout.
hear what
Yeah,
you're
you
saying.
did, yeah.
To answer the first question, when we first moved to Berlin, and we would go to a party or meet a bunch of people for drinks or something, and be meeting people, we were the sort of token Americans, and people would say, "Oh, you're American. What in the world is
Yeah.
happening in your country with
Right.
guns?"
Right.
It was all about like
Guns,
the rest of the
guns,
world
guns, yeah.
looks at America like it is absolutely insane with this many shootings. You know, guns. There was a school shooting in Germany in 2003, and the response was the German government went, "This will never happen again. All guns are now illegal. The only guns that are legal," and this is sort of the nightmare that the right sort of dangles in front of American gun owners, and no one has ever said anyone would do that here. But this is what they did in Germany. Made all guns, handguns, everything illegal except for hunting rifles.
Yeah.
And if you have a hunting rifle, you leave it in a community center locked up, and you have to check it out when you go hunting along with your ammunition. And when you're done hunting over the weekend or after a
Yeah,
week or
you
whatever,
put it
you
up.
put it back in.
Yeah.
So we've been there 4 years. I think there was a gun shot from, a bullet shot from a gun once since we lived. Berlin is a huge city,
Yeah, that's
capital
unbelievable.
city.
Yeah.
Not a murder,
And-
a one gun shot.
Right, and the person there was no death, and it was this huge thing. So now what people say to us
Yeah.
is, "Oh," so we go to a dinner party and they say, "Oh, you're American. Do Americans not know our history? Do they not understand that what is happening there happened here? Do they not understand this? Hitler was all about make Germany great again. Hitler was all about fake news. I mean, this is straight out of the Nazi playbook. And Germans definitely know that because they have not been allowed to forget, thank God, what they did."
Yes.
So I can't speak for the rest of the world, but I can say that in Germany, people are very, very scared. As far as is America sort of the last vestige of not moving forward on these issues? Absolutely not. Russia, for the last 5 or 6 years since Putin came back,
Yeah.
that has become an incredibly dangerous country to be gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender in. And there are many, many countries in the global south it's still very dangerous. And most of these countries, what's interesting is when you look at sort of the rise of nationalism across the world, this whole idea that, it's my country first and screw everybody else. When there is a rise of nationalism, there's also a rise in anti-LGBT stuff,
hate crimes,
anti-racial stuff. Hate crimes just go through the roof because it's generally whatever the traditional demographic and power has been, they are empowered to be racist, be homophobic, be misogynistic, all of it. So
to make everyone unlike their ideology other.
Right.
Basically. So
And do they hang it all on religion the way it happens in the
Oh
U.S.?
yeah, I mean, you look at Poland and Hungary and all of these very scary, super conservative governments that have come in and are doing really shocking things. Americans don't. This stuff isn't really covered that much in the U.S., but there's a lot happening that is very unnerving. Just like here, evangelicals have a huge welcome mat outside of the White House now because they delivered Trump such a huge win, and he's been quite good at appearing to be very religious himself, which is fascinating to watch and scary as well. So religion is always in the mix.
Gotcha.
Religion is always in the mix, and it's the frightening aspect of all of this because of the amount of control the church has. And in this show and in our particular understanding of faith, we feel the only true church is the one that gives you back your power rather than take it. And so our particular ideology is that God is everywhere present and God is present in each person. And we trust you to know what's yours to do, meaning that as you receive the spirit of voice from within, the Spirit of God, that as long as what you are hearing is good for you, good for everyone, we know this is godly. But we don't have people standing up on a Sunday morning and preaching against any other. As a matter of fact, this Sunday I'm going to be, a couple Sundays ago, I'm going to be bringing for the first time a statement of faith, and one of the statements is, I believe in the unity of all life. We believe in the sacredness, of all life. So really consider that, friends, as you're listening. If your faith group is encouraging you, we realize that people all over the world, in fact, are listening and are watching us on YouTube. So we want to encourage you, if your faith leader is pointing to any other aspect of humanity as other, for you to hate or separate yourself from, you really want to take a look at what your soul might be really saying to you about this, that it may be time for you to break away from, it may be the faith of your childhood, it may be, the faith that you've only known, but we know that God is bigger than any dogma or ideology and where you find yourself. I would even say that for me as a minister of a particular faith, that my experience of God is way larger than any particular institution or belief system can hold. But we honor all the paths to God, but we really encourage the individual souls to know that if your faith leader, again, is saying anything to you other than a loving all of humanity, then that's out of alignment with what we know the Spirit of God to be about.
And that is so the message of "for they know not what they do." I mean, really at the end, the evangelical couple who lost their son Ryan, who now have a life group through their evangelical mega church. They have a life group in their home every week where they welcome LGBTQ people who otherwise are not welcome in local churches.
Yeah,
they have them in their home every Wednesday for worship, for fellowship, and Linda Robertson, the mother, says so beautifully at the end of the film, when these people are in their house, in their home, and she looks around the room, especially at the gay men, she thinks, this is what I was afraid of? How could I have been afraid of this?
Yes.
And they talk about this church they found that is no longer, they'd always gone to churches that were against things. Churches that were always against things. And they found this wonderful mega church in Seattle that is for people because Jesus was for us. He was here for us, not against us. So they talk beautifully about that too. So we're totally in alignment with that, like the end of the film. That's the end of the movie.
Well, it scared me though when you said life group. I don't know if you know this about my history, that I went to a Christian school that was run by the Baptist religion, and that was 5th through 12th grade. And when I was in school, there was a group called Life, only it wasn't, which stood for Living in Freedom Eternally, and it was encouraging reparative therapy.
Oh.
So it scared me when you said that. I'm circling back to that part of the discussion because I had a teacher that I believe, in fact, was gay, who brought in representatives from this organization to speak to us about how bad it was to be gay, and went further in terms of the scripture as we were talking about at the beginning. Later that particular year, I had a really, really tough time because somebody had started a rumor about me and this particular teacher. Of course, it was not true. She was just befriending me because she saw that I was pretty lost hearing things like that in her classroom, and I was obviously gay. I mean, it's funny to me when people say, well, I didn't know you were gay. I'm like, oh, Lord, honey, you're just not paying attention, but God bless you.
Open your eyes. Honey.
Yeah. Hello. So I guess I need to wave a flag or something. I don't know what, but.
Or wear a tool belt.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. Where's my tool belt, my power tools? Yeah. I need to be a little angrier, so I can be angry lesbian or something.
Right.
But.
You have such nice hair. How can you be lesbian?
Right, exactly. And good shoes too. I don't know.
Yeah, can't be.
But that was a really, really difficult time for me personally. And in fact, I was even suicidal. So people have no idea what at a young age hearing those things does to a child or teen psyche. The damage, the depression, the wondering about your sacred worth is more damaging than most people can realize. And I'm speaking of that again because. Well, because what you said about life, but we also I've ministered over the years to many, many individuals, mostly men, but a few women, but mostly men who've been through reparative therapy, and many have been through Exodus because, as you say, the headquarters are or were in Orlando, several men in my congregation have been through that and are still healing today.
Yep.
And, 10, 20, 30, 40 years later are still in what I would consider a healing journey. And even their ability to begin to trust the church in any way, shape, or form has been really tremendous on their journey. And I think because I happen to be a minister, well, because I am a minister who happens to be gay, that they are finding some safety and support, even though our church is not a gay church. It's a church for all people. We're very clear about that because we want it to be a real place of diversity. And there is a gay church in town that I'm thrilled is here, Joy MCC. But in our case, we feel that the diversity of individuals, gay, straight, young, old, black, white, millionaires, and homeless, is how we truly know the family of God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's the kingdom of God.
We'll return to the program in just a few moments, but first, we wanted to give a special word of thanks to our podcast partner, CCU Orlando, who has helped make this episode of the Authentic Spiritual Journey possible. Christ Church Unity is a welcoming community dedicated to transforming lives, celebrating diversity, and supporting soul growth. CCU Orlando is located at 771 Holden Avenue in Orlando, Florida, with Sunday services at 9 and 11 a.m. You can stream services live online as well as learn more at christchurchunity.net. We would also like to extend our thanks to our podcast partner, Aikens Counseling Center. Cassandra Aikens is a licensed mental health counselor dedicated to creating sacred space where clients can explore their own inner process in a safe, non-judgmental, and supportive environment. She works with individuals, couples, and groups who are seeking to live a more authentic life. Aikens Counseling Center is located in Winter Park, Florida, and can be found on the web at cassandraaikens.com. We now return you to this week's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey. I have it breaks my heart, the cognitive dissonance. And you were, when you were talking about the guy who had gone through the conversion therapy or what did you call it? Reparative therapy?
Reparative or conversion.
And just
either one, yeah.
You would just feel like garbage about yourself.
Yes.
You're like, okay, so I believe in God, I believe in the Bible, and I believe in Jesus, and I believe all the stories I read in Sunday school, and now they're telling me I'm wrong, and
Yeah.
it's like sitting there, and same with like transgender, you're just sitting there and you just want it so bad, you just want to wish it. If I could wish this
it away.
And so you try. Back in Greensboro, we had at one of the churches we went to. One of the worship leaders, we all kind of suspected was gay, and she just tried to kind of just tamp it down.
Yeah,
she just squashed it down.
Yeah,
she didn't. She kind of went the celibacy kind of route. I'm not going to have any kind of relationship.
Yeah,
because she struggled with what she had learned and what she believed firmly the Bible said about it. And it created this internal struggle, this cognitive dissonance that just radiated out of her. Just whenever you would talk to her, it just got out of her. You know what I mean? You could just see the struggle, and my heart broke for her every time it would come up.
Yes. Well, I mean, whatever is going on with any of us internally becomes the feeling tone of our life. Mm-hmm. And that type of struggle does come out kind of sideways. And it's so tough for any individual who is talented, who loves God, who wants to be of service, and then has to deal with this, like this dissonance all the time. It takes its toll. And often it presents in physical conditions. There's ulcers, there's depression, there's anxiety. It outpictures in many different ways. So again, if you know somebody in a situation like that, talk to them, love them, support them, lift them up, have conversations. It's because watching that is heartbreaking, and some people are not ready for anybody to know either. They're in the shame that is heaped on by the church and its dogma is. And it's really indescribable. if you're and I don't typically say things like this, but if you're a straight person who's never experienced it, you have no idea how it feels.
I can only imagine.
Right.
But I can't go there.
Right.
I
It would be
can't
like
actually.
if I said to you, Dave, now I know you love Shannon, but I don't want you to let anybody know. As a matter of fact, anytime you go to a party, don't introduce her as your wife because it might make somebody there uncomfortable.
It might trigger somebody and they get
as a
all
matter
weird
of fact,
about it.
Don't touch her because if you do that, somebody might.
Yeah, I
No,
can't.
don't let on at all.
Don't let on at all. Oh, yeah, as a matter of fact, arrive in separate cars. Yeah, arrive in separate cars so that people aren't sure if you're together or not. I mean, these are the kind of
Yeah,
things.
so you
and-
live your life like making everybody else comfortable.
Yes.
And oh, by the way, God hates you too.
Yeah,
I
and so
don't
and so
laugh
there's-
because I think
Right.
it's funny. I laugh
Yeah.
because it's so heartbreaking.
It's so unbelievable. There's no place to put that
Right.
kind of hatred, and I think in many times the people perpetuating that hatred are just clueless to the impacts. And I think with Pulse that woke many people up. Like, oh my God, have I helped create this? So there was a lot of. As horrific as Pulse was, I believe that the divine energy of love that wants to really come in and through each individual did, and hearts were changed. I saw that in many people in
Well,
Orlando.
On some level, it's kind of a form of privilege, isn't it? We've heard about white privilege and
Sure.
being able to understand,
Sure.
what it's like to just get side-eyed by everybody, if you're, they think you're shoplifting or something.
Yes,
whatever,
right.
just
Fred's
for
talked
racial.
about that on the show.
But it's kind of like I live in a society where being straight is what is accepted normal and not straight is abnormal. Ergo, I am right and you are wrong, and so that's a form of privilege.
Oh yeah, straight privilege is definitely a thing. I mean, one of the great gifts of my life is that I'm gay because I'm a white male in America. I could be white male and straight and have no idea what it is to be other. Not that all straight white males can't grasp that, but I am so grateful that I have been given this part of who I am to have some sense of what it is not to be in the power position in this country.
And-
And somehow I got, you were talking about people unable to come out because of so much that's been fed to them because of religion. I grew up in a religious household. When I went to Duke, my parents actually, much to my surprise, stopped going to church. But the first thing I did when I got to Duke was I went and signed up to be a chapel usher because I wanted to be in church every Sunday. And then my father was sending money to Jesse Helms, who was a nightmare
I
senator
live in North
from
Carolina.
North
I know exactly
Carolina.
who Jesse Helms
Like
is.
maybe the most racist anti-gay man ever to be in the Congress, which is saying something in America.
Yeah, right.
And
Which is pretty bad.
my dad would send me the notes that Jesse Helms sent him, thanking him for his support, and I'd open them at my little mailbox at Duke, and I'd feel like they were burning my flesh, like because I was
my God.
realizing I was gay, and this was not. On one level, I thought, okay, this is not an option. I'm like their golden child. I've always been the straight A kid, and I never revolted, and this can't be. But my strange experience was that when I was a junior and a senior, I would study every night in the same part of the library in Perkins Library in the main campus at Duke, and I would take my study breaks and leave the library, walk around the corner, and walk into the chapel, which is kind of a cathedral in the center of Duke campus. And I would sit there and have a nightly conversation with God about like how did you make me gay? Like this is so not an option for me. And every night I would leave with the overwhelming feeling that I'm exactly how I was made.
Yes.
That to not acknowledge being gay would be the greatest sacrilege.
It would.
So
Yes.
I had that all in my past, but somehow I was in that chapel every night for at least a year and a half before I finally just accepted, like, okay, this is how God made me. I need to tell everyone. And I don't know why. I feel so lucky about that because my work is all about really at its most base level stopping suicide based on religion, no matter
Yes.
what the
Yes.
issue is. So if I can help other kids, especially, but that suicide happens at all ages with
It
these
does.
issues,
Yes.
depending on how long people have been closeted or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm here. I am here to give people another option because I don't believe this character named Jesus, whether you think he was the Son of God, a
Right.
myth, or just a rabbi, there's nothing in any of that story that makes me think, oh, okay, now I understand why these people should die and leave the planet.
No.
And even why they should change. I just don't see that. So, yeah, I was so lucky on my spiritual journey to have
Yes.
that clarity that I don't really know where it came from, except that it was my download.
Yeah, that was
in the
your
universe.
part of your your soul journey, definitely. And in in terms of all of us in all of our journey as souls, I really believe we come encoded. Literally, our
Yeah.
souls become encoded with a certain DNA that's based on past lives. It's based on our experience here and now. And so, yes, I mean, I think you had a really powerful journey, and I think it really supports everyone to hear how you went through and did that searching. I did the same exact thing myself. And at a very young age, I was in leadership in the church. And I grew up in the Methodist church where I was, at 15 years old, I was directing the adult choir and teaching an adult Sunday school class. So I was very, very at the forefront of leadership. And in my particular church, because it was United Methodist, I wasn't ever hearing anything. Back then, Methodists weren't really concerned about gay people. It was more about United Methodist Commission on Relief, serving worldwide, helping the homeless, working with Mennonites to serve, underprivileged in the area. So that was a big focus of our ministry. It was in the Baptist church I experienced it. So much of the hatred and the judgment about homosexuality. And I honestly think without my family and without my Methodist church, I would not have made it. If I would have only been in that one theology, I don't think I would have made it. But because in my family I somehow found myself to be strong enough to deal with, some of the pressures, and my relationship with God was really strong. But I had the same exact prayer, like, God, the prayer of Apostle Paul, I do the things I don't want to do. And, God, please take this from me. And I finally realized this is who I am. And I'm not going to fight that. I'm going to go with it, and I'm going to celebrate it. And I was not the type that came out necessarily. I just showed up at home with a girlfriend and said, here she is. And I did write a letter to my mom, so she knew, but she knew when I was 5 years old. So it was not a shock to her. But what we want to do, friends that are listening, again, these are spiritual conversations. We want to support you on the journey. We know that on some level, in some way, you're connecting with our stories because they're simply our human stories. They're stories of us feeling other. They're stories of us feeling empowered. And, we trust you're with us on that, and we want to support you. I also want to make sure that we give a couple of resources in show notes. And one is locally, there's really a lot of support for kids and teens. It's called Zebra Coalition, and it's down in the Mills 50 district. They do a lot of work in supporting kids who have been abandoned literally by their families because of their sexual orientation.
And that's for here in Orlando, yeah?
For here in Orlando.
Is Zebra Coalition a thing that's across the country?
No,
Okay.
No, it's just it's local, and there's a lot of great work, and our church has partnered for many years with Zebra Coalition. As a matter of fact, we just had teens from Zebra come in and do a program for our teens, just making them aware of what are all the letters of LGBTQ? What do they mean? How can we be respectful? How can we be honoring? And in fact, our teens are on a very specific journey of their inward process already, and are very supportive and cool. So they were happy to support the teens from Zebra, and the teens now are going to be going out to other faith communities that are maybe not as welcoming to try to bring this message. So we wanted to be a part of it. But no, it is a local organization, and I wanted to mention it
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe, if you're listening to this and you're not in the Orlando area, I would imagine that you can contact the Zebra Coalition. We'll have a link to that into our show notes, and they could probably point you into some resources in your local community.
For sure. And we have our church is online. All of our services are live streamed. We want you to have spiritual support for whatever you may be going through. You might, any of the issues talked about today may not be your issue, but you have other issues. And we are a place of love, acceptance, of support, where we believe every human, every sentient being is in fact holy. So we invite you more into our spiritual community. We also encourage you to find out more about the work Daniel Karslake is doing. And if you have not yet seen For the Bible, please do that. I know you'll be blessed by it.
Yep, I did find it. It is available for streaming on Amazon. So Amazon Prime members can watch it for free. And we will have links to that in our show notes, including links for They Know Not What They Do, and how you can get in touch with Dan if you have any questions. Is it Daniel or Dan? I'm just calling you Dan because I call myself
It's kind of like
Dave.
Alice and Cynthia Alice. Who knows? Whatever.
Where I grew up, it's Danny. Everybody who knew me before I was like 12, it's Danny. Then it was Dan in high school. And then when I went to college, I was Daniel.
Oh, yeah,
So
Daniel.
it's kind of...
Yes. Only Daniels go to Duke.
I answered all three.
But wait, were you Daniel at PBS? Were you at
Yes,
PBS?
yes.
Producer at PBS?
Yeah,
Isn't that
yeah,
what you did?
yeah.
I forget what that show you...
It was called In the Life. It was
yes.
a really wonderful show before its time, a news magazine, monthly news magazine about LGBTQ issues in America, and that's where I started.
Right on. We'll have links to all of that in our show notes that you can check out at experienceofthesoul.com.
And again, friends, I want to just remind you, if there is someone that you believe would benefit from this show, please share this. I really want to get. I want to get away from saying, share it on social media. Make a pointed effort to get it into somebody's hands that needs this information, that needs this support. We want to see people grow and not only survive, but thrive on their spiritual journey in life in general because of the spiritual support they are receiving, both through this podcast and through our ministry. So we thank you in advance for doing that. Thank you for joining us, and many blessings,
And
friends.
if you're watching this on YouTube, hello, YouTubers, you can hit that subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications. And every time we post an episode, it will show up in your email box.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Many blessings.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey, presented by CCU Orlando and Aikens Counseling Center here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible through the continued support of our angel patrons, Dove Borland, Angela Martinez, Peter Gibson, Paul Caswell, and Two Spirit Health Services, along with our partner patrons, CCU Orlando and Aikens Counseling Center. If you would like to help be a part of bringing shows like this and other programs to the channel, please consider becoming a patron. For information, episode show notes, and details about our other shows on the channel, head over to experienceofthesoul.com. And if you enjoyed this program, you can help spread the word by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, or the podcast platform of your choice. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2018, Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Shannon Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.